collagen supplements are such a con, and that there's some really poor quality studies that are in really poor quality medical journals, and they get quoted a lot. And then what they do is they pay one of these dodgy doctors that pretend that they're dermatologists when they're not, and they pay them, and a few kind of beauty journalists, and they get various media coverage, which is really easy to get. It's the easiest thing to kind of buy beauty PR. And they take these quotes and they put them everywhere, and consumers are like, yeah, this works. Davina McCall uses it, must work. So I mean, it's I did that, yeah. So it's very misleading. I hope these companies get taken to court one day, actually.
My guest today is Dr. Ophelia Veraitch, an award-winning consultant dermatologist. Dr. Ophelia boasts an impressive CV that has seen her going from studying medicine in London to then completing a PhD at a Nobel Prize-winning stem cell laboratory in Japan. Dr. Ophelia holds influential positions in academia and the skincare industry, all while delivering private care at a Harley Street clinic in London. Dr. Ophelia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I got to say, your CV is just so hugely impressive that I could interview you for an hour alone on your time management and your productivity tips. But I'm delighted that you're here today to talk all things skin and hair health related things. I wanted to start off perhaps with the skin, if we can, because I watched a video of you in which you said that a consultation with you, if a patient comes in for a consultation with you, you said that it's often described as quite an experience, as you spend a lot of time with a patient focusing on things like how their condition is affecting the quality of their life. And for instance, in my own life, I had terrible acne in my late teens, and it definitely knocked my confidence. So I wonder, what link do you see between, for instance, like skin issues and perhaps mental health?
Oh, so there's a huge impact with any skin issue, particularly chronic ones, and mental health. When we see it all the time. So if someone's suffering with acne or psoriasis, eczema, it's going to affect how they feel about themselves, whether they feel confident to kind of go out or be in relationships, and it has a huge impact on how they do at work. There's some data to show that it affects people getting promotions and things like that. So it affects every aspect of life, and I think that's quite important to assess in the consultation as well, because patients often need extra help with that.
I had no skin troubles at all until I turned about 17, and then I don't know what happened between 17 to 21, but it just went horrific. I started getting these terrible spots, and it did. It really, really knocked my confidence. I was trying things like, and obviously I'm not knocking any men that wear makeup, but I was even trying wearing things like concealer. I was going on things like sunbeds to try to dry my skin out. All things that we now know are kind of problematic. But I just saw myself that it just had a huge, huge confidence impact.
Did you get treatment for your acne?
I didn't. I was afraid of going to a doctor to speak to anyone about it. I just suffered for way longer than I needed to. And that was kind of my downfall, I think. I prolonged it for years, and I had made terrible mistakes in my skin. Is that common at all, people not speaking about it?
Yeah, and increasingly. So it's difficult for your average patient to get appointments with their GPs, and then referrals towards dermatology services are difficult and long. There are less than 500 consultant dermatologists in this country, so access to proper dermatology advice and care is limited. And so I'm increasingly seeing, which causes a lot of problems, people turning as with everything in life now, to social media and getting bad advice, wrong advice, and going round in circles. And the beauty industry is thriving because of it, but a lot of the things that are out there are nonsense. So it creates a problem, and that when people try things that they've been told by these influencers and companies that will work, and then it doesn't work, that can really knock people's confidence, because they get this expectation that I've got these spot patches, and that they're going to cure my acne because someone on TikTok has been using them, and they work, and it's just, that's not the reality, and then you feel really rubbish and then move on to the next kind of gimmick.
When I was like going through that like time period, one of the things that I was very afraid of, I was very afraid about jumping on, for instance, medication. Because I'd like heard from friends at the time, and this was also going back like maybe 10 years ago. And if I remember correctly, I think that the common course would be something like Roaccutane, which I think is very widely prescribed for acne. And I was going through just in preparation for this, I was like going through just like researching it. And for instance, this is what I read. For instance, in America, for Roaccutane, you have to sign paperwork to promise that you won't get pregnant. You have to take a monthly pregnancy test to prove that you're not pregnant. And when I was searching through on Twitter, people were saying like that it was shrinking the size of their nose. It was giving chapped lips, associated with mental health problems. What is the kind of truth about that drug in terms of treating acne? Where'd you kind of come on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good drug at definitively treating people with bad acne. However, it's not the only treatment option, and I think back in the day, dermatologists would kind of give it out very freely. It's always been quite tightly regulated, monthly visits, and if you're a woman, monthly pregnancy tests, and then we need to see the patients every month, particularly to check on their mental health issues, because there have been it's a slightly controversial area, but there have been a number of suicides of patients who have been on it, and so obviously that has to be taken seriously. There are a lot of side effects to it, but there are other treatments for acne that also work really well, and it's the vast minority of patients with bad acne that need Roaccutane. So, for instance, there are really good topical treatments now. I make prescription acne medications. With the topical form of Roaccutane also is effective as a serum, and you can combine it with antibiotics and salicylic acid and all sorts of other ingredients, which we never really used to be able to do. Then you've got all sorts of laser treatments, and for women in particular, there's a medication called spiralactone, which has an anti-testosterone effect, and that's really good for hormonal acne. Men can't take it, but there are lots of other options out there, and we probably. I personally have. I used to have clinics full of patients with Roaccutane. I hardly ever prescribe it now because I use all these other things I've just discussed. So, yeah, it's a controversial area, but it's a good medication, particularly for boys with bad acne. Sometimes you've got no choice but to prescribe it.
And I suppose there is kind of a trade-off there, because with many medicines, they may have no negative effects, but they may also have no positive effects. I see this is so common in the supplement industry. People say, "Oh, this magic supplement, it won't do you any damage," but the chances are it also won't do you any positive thing. So there is a kind of a trade-off there. But what you were saying there is that now there are many, many other very positive alternatives to, for instance, to Accutane that you use.
Yeah, things like treatments, chemical peels, laser treatments. There are other medications as well that can be taken for acne.
And in terms of acne, what do we know about, for instance, what causes it?
There's quite a few different factors that are involved in acne. There's a hormonal drive to it. at the base of your pores, you have these oil-producing sebaceous glands. They're quite sensitive to testosterones and progesterones that circulate in our bodies. That's why you can get acne in babies even, but it tends to be more prevalent in teenagers and upwards. And so it's quite hormonally driven, but also if you think the opening of the pore, if that gets blocked by heavy makeup and build up of sebum, that can also, so kind of heavy makeup wearers and dusty environments, that can all cause breakouts. The role that diet plays is probably overspoken about. There might be some trigger factors like dairy and gluten, but and processed sugars and things, but that's very minor. And I think if you exclude those out your diet, you're not going to cure your acne. But it's an easy one for people to write about and talk about. So there's a variety of different genetics as well. Yeah.
And I would kind of love to just ask you about something you mentioned there. So in terms of makeup, if someone comes to your clinic and they've got very bad acne and they're going through, one of your treatment plans, which are obviously very effective, are you telling them to stop wearing makeup altogether, or how are you kind of approaching that one?
Well, I get to know my patients quite well, so I'd want to know what they do for work, how public facing they are, what's going on with their social lives as well. And I do try to encourage people not to wear heavy makeup. And I do go through that with all my female patients. And if women do need some kind of coverage, that you can get these powder compacts and you can put them on with, you can give an illusion of coverage with that. But I try to avoid against the kind of liquid thick foundation and concealers that can further occlude the pores and make it worse. But sometimes people will need it to be able to give themselves the confidence to go out. But definitely, as I see my patients for follow-ups, the ones that tend to wear really heavy makeup, as their skin gets better, you'll see that they'll start wearing less and less makeup. I'm a bit of an anti-makeup. Yeah, it does. It can cause problems.
Yeah, I love that. And in terms of like other lifestyle factors, I'm curious because you mentioned that like perhaps diet is overspoken about. And I remember, even at the time when I had my own battles with acne, I remember people would say things to me like, "You're just not drinking enough water," and all this kind of other stuff. And you'd think, I am drinking plenty of water. And what about like other lifestyle factors, like, I don't know, pillows, like sleep? What are some of the other perhaps risk factors there?
I think the two other biggest ones are smoking and alcohol. So those kind of lifestyle factors particularly smoking, has a very strong linkage with acne and folliculitis and any of the skin disorders which are caused by what we call a follicular occlusion. So if you stop smoking, that if you do smoke, that will also help with the acne, and also people can get flares after they've been binge drinking and things like that.
Why would smoking do that? What's the mechanism? Is it drying the skin out, or what's going on there?
It just exacerbates. It's occlusive in some ways. I think it's the actual smoke. So people often, if they get the tube to work, that you get quite a lot of build up on the skin. And I think if you smoke as well, you've got a lot of particles that can kind of occlude the openings of those pores that get blocked, and it's got something to do with that. But there is a strong correlation between the two.
I would love to ask you, perhaps moving away from the face temporarily to the back, because this was a question that we had a few people ask about. I think particularly for men, if they've gone through, for instance, a course of anabolic steroids, you hear many people say that they suffer with something called Backne, which I've become more and more familiar with after announcing you were coming on the show. What is going on here? And have you seen it clinically, and how are you kind of going about treating that?
Yeah, it's fairly common. A lot of patients with acne on their face will also have acne on their chest and backs. It's very for men, it's very testosterone sensitive as well. So if there are, you mentioned patients on anabolic steroids, there's a strong correlation with that because the sebaceous glands have got testosterone receptors on them, so that makes them the oil activity increase when you're taking these anabolic steroids. If people are doing a lot of exercise, if they're wearing kind of going to the gym a lot and wearing kind of synthetic materials tight on the skin, that can kind of further block the openings of the pores and cause inflammation. And you can get quite bad scarring with it as well. And it can really affect people's confidence. And it's important to ask: does it stop you going swimming and kind of walking around without your top on and things like that? People can get really self-conscious about it, and it can impact what they would and wouldn't do on holiday, for instance. We treat it in much the same way as we treat facial acne.
Right. That's really good to know. And I'm curious because you mentioned like the sex hormones there, like for instance testosterone. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and not yesterday, last week, and she was telling me that her boyfriend, he does nothing for his skin. She said he rolls out of bed in the morning, throws some water on it, does nothing else. And she said in her eyes, she said the guy's got perfect skin, never has any breakouts, never does anything like that. And she said that in her own life, she said she's got, a very expensive skincare routine, has much, much worse skin. Are there, for instance, sex differences in terms of are men or women more prone to acne? Because I've heard this kind of stereotype that men really do nothing for their skin. I'm curious, are there kind of any differences there at all?
No, but both men and women can get acne. Women can get more hormonal breakouts related to their periods. Men tend to get the more kind of constant acne, but they can get very, very severe cystic acnes. But it's interesting what you said about your friend's comparison. It's not so much the comparison about being a man and a woman. It's more about expensive skincare regimes with women, and it's a really tricky one. But if you ask any dermatologist, we don't spend a lot of money on our skincare, and we don't do much as well because it's the luxury skincare products that are often not very good for your skin. I mean, it's quite interesting if you go to the beauty halls in Harrods, for instance, and look at some of these products. And I'm a real, doing what I do for a living, I just look at the ingredients, and you can have creams for hundreds of pounds, and you look at the ingredients, and it's just like, well, there's nothing in this that is going to be doing what this famous actress and is saying on the adverts that it does for your skin. It's just the majority of those kinds of brands come from the same 5 factories in the world, and including the cheaper brands as well. And it's just a matter of packaging and branding. And it's a real con because you wouldn't get these products marketed for men. They'd get into trouble. But I think the beauty industry is kind of founded on the assumption that women are stupid, and they'll pay anything to kind of think that they're buying this cream for a few £100s is going to make them look better. And some of the patients that I have when they first came to me with the worst skin were these kinds of women who had like ridiculous 10-step skincare regimes and were spending a huge amount on their skincare. You very rarely have people with really good skin who have kind of bought into that cycle of skincare products.
Wow, so what you're saying there, I guess, is the first real practical tip for our audience, which is that the more expensive the product doesn't necessarily mean that it works better than the off-the-shelf standard products that we can get. Like, more expensive doesn't mean better. Is that what I'm inferring?
Almost the opposite, because it's the luxurious products that are packed full of fragrances and preservatives that can be really bad for the skin, whereas your more basic, simple skincare products, tend to just, for instance, for cleansers and moisturizers, as an example, I'll recommend, Simple Brand from Boots, or CeraVe, or Cetraban. These are all kind of very inexpensive things that you can buy at any pharmacist, and they're just as good as using any of the kind of more expensive brands. Actually, they're probably much better.
The beauty industry is obviously enormous. I was looking on Statista.com this morning, and it says that it's worth $579 billion in 2023. And I think there's so much confusion out there. What products to use, which treatments to take, pseudo practitioners, social media influencers selling products that, people think that's how they got their skin when it's probably not. And they're getting paid enormous amounts to promote products. So why is there so much, perhaps, confusion in this space? And I guess, how do people kind of sift through that?
Can I say what I think? I mean, it's a big industry, and men and women will it's about that link between skin and mental health, and thinking that if you buy XYZ, your skin will be good, and then you'll feel better, and wonderful things will happen in your life. And I think the industry kind of pivots a lot within those realms. But the truth is that most beauty brands and most information on social media is not put together by people who really know anything about skin. For instance, I from med school to becoming a consultant dermatologist was 18 years of training for me. Loads of exams, and it's crazy the amount of, there are about 3,000 or 4,000 different skin conditions you need to know about to pass our board exams. And you've got, none of that was taught at medical school, none of that was taught as a junior doctor, but you've got all of these medics who are unhappy with what they're doing, who are leaving medicine, and they're sat at home making videos, developing huge followings. A lot of brands that are doctor brands, actually, I can't name names, but you'd be really surprised, and they'd have everybody believing that they were dermatologists, and they're not. So you've got a lot of people in the media pretending that they're dermatologists. You've got a lot of beauty brands out there who are definitely not founded by dermatologists, but what they will do is they will, do the odd thing here and there and get a doctor to say, this works, this is really good. And it's very misleading to the public. I hope in time things will change, but unfortunately, the people who are very knowledgeable about skin, we're in a minority. We're very, very busy. My colleagues, I do these things because I feel that instead of laughing about what gets said in the media, we need to contribute the correct information. But most of my colleagues are not like that. They've got really busy clinics. They're kind of happy in their own practices, and they don't want to get involved in this world because it's really, quite frankly, horrible to have to. And beauty journalists have a responsibility to try and understand what the truth is. But you've got, top tier publications where they're beauty and cosmetic guides. They'll be so thick, and they might have one or two dermatologists or actual plastic surgeons within these guides, but it's all about advertorials, about the individuals paying to be in these guides, and they'll have lists of top dermatologists, and maybe only 1 out of the 10 will actually be a dermatologist. I mean, as a beauty editor for very famous publications, you would expect that they know that. But it's a very dirty world.
And do we need, for instance, in this field, is there the need for things like perhaps stronger regulations? Because, for instance, with things like people promoting skincare products or hair care products, you never, it's quite difficult to know on the on the outset what qualification someone has. It's really difficult to kind of actually do the digging. You just see someone that is good looking and you go, perfect, that's what I want. So do you think that perhaps there does need to be more regulation there?
Well, there are discussions at the moment about increasing the regulations in the aesthetic industry in the UK. But, the whole word aesthetics is a made-up specialty. It doesn't exist. The General Medical Council in the UK doesn't recognise aesthetics. There's no specialty training. So anyone, whether they're a doctor or even not a doctor, you can be anyone, and you can do short courses, and as a medic you can do a course in Botox, and which is half a day, and then you can start posting on Instagram, and you've got a huge following, you've got really busy practice, and no one knows that you haven't really done any extra, you're not really a specialist in that field, but you've got people coming to see you about your skin. It's so this in America, for instance, you're not allowed to do injectables if you're not a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon. In some parts of Europe, you can only inject fillers if you're a dermatologist, for instance. Whereas in this country, you've got anyone can do it. They're trying to tighten up on that, but the problem is the aesthetics industry is largely ruled by unruly medics who are not specialised in anything, and they want to protect their turf. So, so at the moment it's been in the news a lot, but it's really interesting. I've been looking at the people that they've invited onto, This Morning and various different TV and radio channels. They're not inviting the actual specialists in skin or plastic surgery. They're inviting these aesthetic doctors who have got no qualifications to actually be talking about skin. So it's a very difficult thing to regulate. And I think that if they do regulate it properly, as you've mentioned about the finances, so many people will go out of business.
What do you see as the biggest scam or source of people getting ripped off in the aesthetic industry?
Collagen supplements.
Oh. Elaborate, because is this a controversial point? Because I know a lot of people promote them.
No. So all dermatologists and proper doctors within those fields agree with this about the collagen supplements. It's a joke, but it's funny to hear every time about how well they do, and you get patients coming to you all the time saying that they're taking them, and I've tried everything, nothing's worked. What have you tried? I'm on the collagen supplements, I'm on biotin, I'm on. Well, you haven't really tried anything that's worked. Like, who says use them? So as you get older, we lose collagen in our skin, and that's what that loss of volume is what makes us look older. But by drinking it, and even if there's small pieces of collagen, which they're marketing now, is because it used to be that the collagen was so big it didn't get absorbed. Now they're making them with really small pieces of collagen, so they do get absorbed. But that doesn't. And most of these collagen supplements come from, you can get some vegan one and plant-based ones, but most of them are ground up farm animals of some sort. And so we eat collagen in our daily diets every day anyway, but even if you absorb them, it doesn't make it into our own skin's stem cell cycling, so it doesn't ever contribute to the collagen that we make in our own skin. So there's a host of very rare genetic conditions called epidermolysis bullosa, where patients are born with mutations where they don't produce their own collagen, and it's a very severe disease, and life expectancy is very short. But if they drink collagen, it doesn't cure their disease. So it's essentially very expensive supplements that goes in one end and goes out the other. It's not going to do you any harm. But the problem that I have is that these companies are very misleading. I've had tussles online with a few of them recently. I don't know whether you've seen, but I let the companies up, and I'm like, who's founded the company? And it's just like no qualifications at all. And one of them even had in their profile like mother of four. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what qualification is that? And it's normally like white middle class women who've got wealthy husbands, and they want to do something to make. It's really easy to make a beauty brand. You just need to go to one of these factories, and be like, I want to buy that product and put it into this packaging, and you've got a product, and then use somebody else's money to kind of market it, and it's really easy to sell because but they're expensive and they're misleading to patients who've actually got genuine skin and hair problems. So that's why I have to have long consultation times, particularly for hair, because when people, by the time they actually get to me and realize that all this stuff out there is nonsense, and there is a very few number of dermatologists that specialize in things like hair, they've tried all of these things and they've really been told that it works. It doesn't work. Then they have that emotional letdown, and then they go, so they don't really believe what anyone says, and that takes a long time to go through all of that with patients and win their trust and then put them on the right track. And but collagen supplements are such a con, and that there's some really poor quality studies that are in really poor quality medical journals, and they get quoted a lot. And then what they do is they pay one of these dodgy doctors that pretend that they're dermatologists when they're not, and they pay them, and a few kind of beauty journalists, and they get various media coverage, which is really easy to get. It's the easiest thing to kind of buy beauty PR. And they take these quotes and they put them everywhere, and consumers are like, yeah, this works. Davina McCall uses it, must work. So it's very misleading. I hope these companies get taken to court one day, actually.
Wow. And is it fair to say that, for instance, with the collagen, if most people listening to this, I imagine, are eating probably well-balanced diets. I can't imagine that, obviously, perhaps this is arrogant to me, but I can't imagine there are too many people in the Western world that are, for instance, nutrient deficient. As you guys may have guessed, brain health and clear thinking is so important to myself and to the Freedom Pact as a brand. That is why we are delighted to partner with London Nootropics to bring you guys brilliant adaptogenic coffee. Unlike traditional coffee that can come with things like anxiety, jitteriness, and even an afternoon crash, London Nootropics are specifically designed to help elevate your day and to avoid all of those side effects. London Nootropics are made with their highest quality medicinal mushroom extract and other adaptogens. Each blend of London Nootropics is designed with a specific purpose in mind. You could take Flow in the morning, as this will help with mental clarity and focus. You could take Mojo in the afternoon, as this will give you a natural boost. And if later in the evening you're feeling a little bit stressed, then you could take the Zen, as this will help alleviate anxiety and stress. Starting your day in a productive way is so important. As we have mentioned on this podcast in over 300 episodes, we know how important that is. And that is why lately I've been using the Flow every single day to kick start my mornings. Should you wish to try this brilliant adaptogenic coffee that we are so happy to partner with, then you can head over to londonnootropics.com and use the code FreedomPact for 20% off at checkout. Right, back to today's episode. So
yeah, it's not really a thing being collagen deficient and it causing issues. with anything really. What does work is if you inject collagen into the skin, and that's the whole world of dermal fillers. So for people who actually want to replace their collagen that they've lost um, as they get older, and there are ways to stimulate. There are certain injections that you can inject into the skin to stimulate your own collagen production, and that works. But drinking collagen supplements doesn't do anything.
And let me ask you about tanning, if we can, to kind of tie off the skin before we perhaps have a chat about hair. Where I was based in South Wales, you know, there was a joke that on every street corner there was either a gym or a tan bed salon. And I went on this morning to this sunbedassociation.org.uk, and they say, what are the benefits? This was in their FAQ section. What are the benefits of using a sunbed? Sunbeds offer a controlled way to tan and can provide appropriate levels of UV to ensure sufficient levels of vitamin D are achieved and maintained. With a sunbed, a tanning program can be developed to ensure skin type and the type of sunbed you use are taken into consideration to ensure that overexposure, including the possibility of burning, is avoided. And then they say, is it true that there is no such thing as a safe tan? No. Tanned skin protects against sunburn, thought to be the main cause of melanoma. If you avoid getting sunburned, the benefits of moderate sun exposure, see vitamin D section, will far outweigh any risks. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
That's crazy. I can't believe that that's allowed to be online. I mean, using a sunbed, less than 5 times in your life, like, significantly increases your risk of getting melanoma. And I have a lot of international patients, and when they come here, they're always just like, yeah, tanning beds still exist in this country. They're not banned, and it's just like, it's this thing about regulation. It will affect too many businesses, but yeah, definitely. And melanoma is on the rise as well. So yeah, it amazes me. Yeah, that's just absolutely crazy, and it's just like that information is wrong, and also they're increasing people's cancer risks.
And guising it under the benefit of taking vitamin D.
Yeah, I mean, you can take supplements. Yeah.
Crazy. I would love to kind of, because that was something as well for me, because like when I was like, I had bad acne, that was something that I like turned to, because like I realized quite quickly that it would like dry my skin out. And what I've realized now in like later years is that I have to now be very careful, because as you said, the risks, when I read about it, I was like, why did I do that?
Yeah. So we do give very controlled shortwave doses of light therapy to treat certain skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema. But when it's so controlled, it's very different to tanning booze. And it's a medication almost, and the UV light as well does it targets one of the bacteria that's active in acne. So there is some role that light has in controlling acne, but it has to be very narrow wavelength. So it's still not advisable for patients to go to tanning beds, because the people who run tanning salons are not knowledgeable about this area. Of photodermatology, which is a very specialised field within dermatology in itself. So yeah, that's why people feel that it.
And I would love to ask you, what is your daily skincare routine?
Well, I don't know. I'm terrible. I wash in the shower in the morning my face with something very basic, maybe Cetraban cleanser or Cetaphil or CeraVe. they're all just a few pounds. You can pick them up anywhere. And I never ever go out without a sunblock, but I'll probably just do those two things on a daily basis, and that's it. And then I cleanse in the evening as well. But I'm prone to a couple of skin conditions myself. So I do get acne and I do get melasma, which is the hormonal pigmentation that everyone with my skin color gets as they get older. And I will use prescription skincare for a few months a year just to clear all of that up. But yeah, but in the intervening, because they actually work. And actually, if you're using a skincare serum that actually works, why do you need to carry on using it all the time? So my skin serums that I prescribe my patients, I use them myself, but I only need to use it for 3 or 4 months. The condition that I'm treating is being treated, and then you only need like maintenance, like maybe once a year or twice a year afterwards. If you're using something that really says it treats acne or treats pigmentation, you don't need to use it forever. So I go through short periods of specifically treating specific concerns with prescription items. Yeah.
And that sounded like a very, perhaps someone listening to this, they may look at you and say, wow, I'm shocked that, because that sounded like such a basic routine. And I'd love to ask you there, because you mentioned about, for instance, sunblock, and you mentioned, you're not leaving the house without it. Someone listening to this may say, well, I thought I only needed it in the summer. What would you say to that?
No, you need it all year round, because so you've got UVB and UVA, and then you've got the light that comes from screens, for instance. And it's the UVB which causes skin cancer, and the UVA causes skin aging and a lot of pigmentation problems. But that will even come through the windows, and that's also some of the lights that we get from screens can cause those problems as well. So even if on a day like this, if I didn't go out, I'd still wear a sunblock because I'm getting my UVA from the window here, and then I'm getting also damage from the screen. So we need protection every day, and yeah, that's the most important thing to do. That's why some people who've got really simple skincare regimes have got really great skin, and you talk to them, and it's just like, yeah, but they're really careful in the sun, and I'll always wear sunglasses even in the winter. It's really important to protect the skin around your eyes, because that's really difficult to correct without doing surgery once you start getting lots of excess, wrinkly skin around your eyes. So it's just best to just protect that skin in the first place by wearing sunglasses, like wherever you go. Not at night time, of course.
And is it a myth or true that bags under your eyes are caused by a lack of sleep?
No, they're not caused by a lack of sleep. It's a part of the aging process. So UV light is probably the biggest one. Genetics. Sometimes you can get pigmentation, but that's actually relatively less common. And then as you get older, the skin can thin, and then what happens is it can be quite translucent, and the vessels underneath, particularly the veins, can show through. So that can also cause a lot of the kind of darkening effect that people get. So there's many different things that contribute to the dark circles.
Right. Because I was always wondering that. I thought, why am I getting these bags under my eyes?
Sleeping helps.
Yeah, sleeping helps for a lot of things. That's what I found as I got older. I would love to kind of ask you about hair. Now, for anyone watching this on YouTube, they will see you have lovely thick hair, and I would love to kind of ask you: do you have any skin in the game, no pun intended, on using natural shampoo versus chemical shampoo?
It's just a shampoo. Like, use whatever you like. It's not going to make a difference. There are things that make a difference. Your shampoo is not going to make a difference to your hair.
What are some of those things that make a difference?
So it depends what the issue with your hair is to start with. So what's the diagnosis? What have people got hair shedding? That's normally caused by stress or being unwell. That will normally pass and recover back to baseline, unless you've got a really strong genetic, hormonal, age-related hair thinning, and which is the common type of male-female pattern hair loss. Those conditions have got lots of treatment options. So you can have hair growth tonics that can contain various active ingredients like minoxidil and finasteride and melatonin, the sleep hormone. Your hair grows when you sleep. And then there are tablet treatments that you can take to make the hair grow and thicken. There are things like PRP, PRF treatments, mesotherapy, which is you come to clinic and you have growth factors and anti-testosterone kind of molecules injected into the scalp. They work really well. And then you've got a rarer group of conditions which are autoimmune, inflammatory conditions which can cause hair loss, and they've got quite specific, normally. Immunosuppressant type medications which can be applied topically or orally or by injections to treat those, but they're relatively rare. But it depends on what the cause is, and none of those conditions we treat with shampoos.
And you mentioned two there that I'm quite interested in, finasteride and minoxidil. And I'm curious, how effective are these, for instance, in terms of, if someone is losing their hair, how effective are they?
So minoxidil is an old-fashioned blood pressure tablet. Doesn't get used much for blood pressure anymore. Things have moved on in that arena, but it's, they found out in the 60s and 70s that the cardiology patients all had their hair growing. So, it got packaged and is what we know now as Regain. It's good because patients who are at home and don't have access to going to see a dermatologist have got, it's easy for them to go to Boots and buy some Regain, and it works. One of the negative things about it is that you can get the shedding, and that so for instance, I don't put my female patients who have got stress related shedding and thinning on minoxidil, because it just compounds that shedding, and that can be quite stressful for patients. But for some patients, it's a very good and effective treatment option.
The supplement creatine, is there any risk to people taking this that it could cause them hair loss?
Yeah, I always take my patients off creatinine. I don't think there's any benefit to be on it, and there isn't a clear link that it causes hair loss or shedding, but I have had a number of patients who've had quite significant shedding on them. But they're often on a whole host of other supplements, and you kind of often have to claw back and there are really important vitamins for hair, and they tend to be things like iron, zinc, B12, folate, vitamin D, like the really kind of basic ones, and those are important. And I think there's a creatinine and biotin is the other one. They definitely don't help. You never put patients on them and their hair kind of grows back or stops shedding. It can do the reverse, actually, and they can have other side effects as well.
What do you think about people? Because I even know a few of these people that they start losing their hair, and they, for instance, fly out to Turkey to get a hair transplant. That's obviously another option that kind of people can take. What have you made of kind of the wave of people doing that?
I think it's coming, but I don't know. I feel that it's becoming less common now because the medical treatments for treating hair thinning are so much more widely available. I mean, if you have a hair transplant, you've got to be up for looking pretty terrible for like quite a few months, up to a year afterwards. And then it depends on the cause of the hair loss. So yes, for male pattern hair loss, it is a treatment option. But you also post-transplant, you need to look after those hair follicles, and you still need to have maintenance treatments, which is what I've discussed before. Um, women particularly who have it and haven't controlled their underlying cause of their hair thinning or hair loss, the transplanted hair follicles can also get affected as well. So you've got to kind of be quite careful. But people with extensive hair loss, that has gone for a long period of time, as long as they've got a good donor side, it is a treatment option. I don't think it looks that natural. It depends. Some transplant surgeons, do really well, but you can also get folliculitis and infections of the sites, and you can get scarring, you can get keloid scarring at the points where they transplant all the hair follicles. So there are a lot of things to consider. It's really expensive as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I would love to ask you this, because this is something I hear about all the time, and I'm not too sure what's going on by you. If someone has, for instance, someone they wants to grow their hair, I've heard many a time anecdotally that what you should do is to get your hair cut. Is that true at all? That kind of getting your hair cut is, it does good things to your hair. I'm not sure. You hear the same things about shaving. You shouldn't shave here, or you shouldn't shave there because it'll grow back thicker. What is going on there? I'm so confused about that.
It's good to cut the split ends just to keep it in good condition. It's not going to make it grow longer or quicker. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about that. I think it's neither here or there. Yeah, you're not gonna cutting your hair is going to make it. If you've got a problem with growing your hair, cutting it repeatedly will make it shorter. But it will make it look nicer. It will make it look healthier because you don't have those split ends at the bottom. So,
in terms of the hair, what would be some of the lifestyle factors that perhaps people could be doing daily? And we talked a little bit about shampoo and whatnot. What are some of the things that perhaps people could be doing every day that could be destroying their hair?
definitely heat treating, so blow drying. Um, that can massively damage your hair. So women with hair thinning and hair loss will often wash and blow dry their hair every day to make it look kind of acceptable for them to go out. And it really, I used to do it. I used to straighten my hair and blow dry it all the time. And patients ask me, the ones that have known me for a long time, my hair's probably doubled in thickness over the last couple of years, and it's because I started taking my own advice. I don't actually take any medication or use any treatments. I just stop blow drying my hair. And it's a funny thing because the younger generation are a lot more happier to have their natural hair, how they are, and there's a cultural thing with that as well. And people with darker skin types can get a really nasty scarring type of hair loss from the chemical and heat related treatments that they do. And there's been a huge acceptance in the younger generation for women to accept their natural hair type, and it's so much better for the hair. And then you've got kind of my generation and above who feel like they're walking around half naked without having their hair blow dried or straightened. So I explained to my patients that actually by blow drying our hair, it's making us look older. So you've just got to embrace our kind of God-given gifts and just, keep the blow dries for special occasions. And it doesn't make the hair grow if you stop doing all these heat chemical relations. It won't make your hair grow and it won't make it thicker, but the actual hair shaft will be much healthier. So it makes a big difference.
And how often per week would you say that you are washing your hair? I never thought I'd ever find myself asking someone this question, but but there we go.
So it used to be every day. I had really damaged my hair. Now I'd probably do it a couple of times a week. And I try and get my patients to, if they could try and wash their hair not too frequently, maybe once or twice a week is ideal. because also if you wash your hair too often, you're stripping the oil from the scalp, and then your scalp, the sebaceous glands in the scalp start producing even more oil, and then it gets greasy really quickly, and it's a vicious cycle.
I love it. I love it. I think we've covered so much ground today. Tell these guys where they can connect with you, what you would love our audience to check out, and tell us where we can connect with you and get the amazing work that you are doing.
Okay, so my NHS place is at UCLH. My private practice is in Harley Street, and I guess it would be my website, wouldn't it? But I don't know if you'll put that in. It's
We will.
www.ophelia.com. Yeah, I have a really great secretary. She sorts everything out for me.
The last question that we finish off all of our podcasts with, that is not related to the skin or hair, although maybe it might be, I'm not sure, is what makes a life worth living for Dr. Ophelia?
My kids. I've got a 10 and an 8-year-old.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's always great to speak to people that are, evidence-based, and clearly in this industry there's so many snake oil salesmen, and I really, really think that we covered so much ground there that people are going to just find really valuable. So I really thank you for taking the time, for coming on, for agreeing to do this, and it was a real pleasure.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.